Good evening. This is the April 11th, 2019 meeting of the Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Chris Yarnell, and I am the Vice Chairman of the Commission. We're going to do introductions, but I'd like to remind everybody as they speak if they would please turn on their microphone. Also, if you've got your cell phones on, please silence them. We don't have our liaison quite here yet, so we'll go ahead and start here.
Michael Lester.
Michelle Mahoney.
Jack Deacon.
Penny Quigg.
Beth Sweeten. Ann Strautman, City Staff.
Bunny Tricky Cotton.
Dale Vaughn.
Blake Marcus.
Hank Vogt.
Eric Barron, Planning Manager.
Anna Naniski, Planning and Zoning.
Ian Zollinger, Planning and Zoning.
Sonny Sanders, Director of Planning and Protective Services.
Ryan Molman, City Councilor.
Shane Wade, Engineering Division.
All right, thank you very much. We'll start with the determination of a quorum. The City Code authorizes 9 regular members and 3 alternates. Alternates are designated to vote upon the absence or disqualification of regular members. A quorum of 5 members or alternates is necessary to conduct business. I declare that a quorum is present. The following regular members are absent this evening: Dean Dutoy and Chris Jordan. Anybody need to disqualify themselves from anything? Seeing none. The voting members are as follows: Bunny Tricky Cotton, Jack Deacon, Michael Lester, Michelle Mahoney, Blake Marcus, Dale Vaughn, Hank Vaught, and Penny Quigg. Call for cases. We have case number P19013, a proposal to rename West Miller Street rear to Courtney Way. Case number P19014, zoning code text amendment pertaining to medical marijuana facilities. Case number 19015, the 600 block of Bolivar Street, preliminary and final subdivision plat of Jefferson Landing. Do we have any continuances? Have we received any?
No.
Do we have a request to reorder the agenda?
Yes. We would ask that we would reorder the agenda so that case number P19015, 600 block of Bolivar Street, preliminary and final subdivision plat of Jefferson Landing be heard first.
Okay. Format of the hearing and the order of testimony. Ian, will you please read the format of the hearing and order of testimony for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will. I would like to briefly describe the procedures of the Commission. The proceedings of the meeting are being recorded, so please step forward to the microphone when you speak and give your name and address for the record. The standard order for each case is as follows. After the introduction of the request by city staff, the applicant or their consultants will provide the information on the request. The opening presentation by the applicant shall be limited to 10 minutes unless additional time is granted by the Commission. The applicant shall have 3 additional minutes for closing testimony if requested. We will then ask to hear from supporters of the request. We will then ask to hear from opponents of the request. We will then ask to hear from anyone else who wishes to speak on the request. Testimony shall be limited to 3 minutes each unless additional time is granted by the Commission. City staff will then make their recommendations on the request. In order to reduce the time necessary to hear an application, references to printed material, including staff reports and applicable findings, shall not be read into the record unless directed by the Commission. The Commission will then close testimony from the floor. The Commission will then discuss the proposal, then publicly make its determination with reasons. The form of the motion shall be positive, that is, the motion shall be made to accept the request as presented or with modifications, stipulations, or conditions. A final vote will be taken with ayes in favor and nays opposed. The chairman shall announce the results of the vote, specifying the number of votes cast in favor and the number of votes cast against. The following documents are entered as exhibits for all items under consideration at this meeting: the City Code of the City of Jefferson as amended, the Comprehensive Plan and Land Use Map, copies of applications under consideration, a list of property owners to whom notices were sent, the affidavit of publication of the public notice in the newspaper, copies of drawings, plans, and/or renderings under consideration, letters and memoranda from staff, staff reports, minutes of proceedings, correspondence or other materials submitted by the public or the applicant, rules of procedure for the Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. These items are public record and available for inspection in the Department of Planning and Protective Services or through the Office of the City Clerk. Please be advised that any items that are presented, distributed, or otherwise received pertaining to the cases under consideration become the property of the Commission. This includes any photographs, drawings, petitions, and letters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Our council liaisons come in. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Good evening, everyone. Carlos Graham, City Council Liaison to this commission.
Okay. Could we please adopt the agenda? Need a motion probably to adopt it as reordered.
I'd move to adopt the agenda with the reordering of case number P19015 to be first, followed by 19013 and then 19014.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries with the adopted agenda. We need to have an approval of minutes. If you'd like to take a couple minutes to look through them, if you haven't already. And whenever you're ready.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
We have a motion
A second.
and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Communications received. Ian, do we have any communications?
Yes, and I believe they were distributed to you. It's pertaining to P19013, the street name change.
Should we take a minute? Why don't we take a minute and let everybody look through that? We'll take just a minute or two and you can take a look at it. Okay. New business and public hearings. Case number 19015, 600 block of Bolivar Street, preliminary and final subdivision, plat of Jefferson Landing. Ian, would you like to do a staff report, please, sir?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to point out the location of the property. The property is located on the southwest corner of Missouri Boulevard and Highway 5063 here, or on the northeast corner of Missouri Boulevard and Bolivar Street. The zoning of the property is C2 General Commercial. Here we have an air photo of the property, and for your information, I've changed the orientation of the property, the north arrow here, so you know, with Bolivar Street at the top and Missouri Boulevard at the bottom, and Highway 5063 on the right-hand side here. Here we have the preliminary subdivision plat. The subdivision consists of 7 lots, with the total size of the entire subdivision being over 7 acres. Typically, a preliminary plat consists of displaying items such as location of easements, utilities, building locations and outlines, and improvements. Here on this lot here, we have 2 existing buildings. They are this part of what is left of the old St. Mary's development of the hospital. And the rest has been demolished. And then we have the parking structure, which still exists here. You can see from this still exists here. No new streets are being created with this subdivision. There will be a privately owned drive on lot 4 here that will be used to access the rest of the subdivision. Sidewalk already exists along Missouri Boulevard and Bolivar. There is a gap in the sidewalk here, but there is a development agreement between the owners and the city to take care of that in the next few years to connect that sidewalk. Here we have the final subdivision plat. And for your information, the final plat would need to, there are 2 lots that will need to go before the Board of Adjustment to be processed before it can be approved by the City Council. And that case will be heard on May 14th. It involves 2 variances, one for Lot 6, which is here, that has no street frontage, and one for Lot 7 that has a setback issue. And street frontage is a requirement for the zoning code, and that's why a variance is needed. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the plat, and the consultant is here as well to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have questions for staff? Okay. Who would like to present this case?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Sampson, Central Missouri Professional Services, 2500 East McCarty Street. And I'm here tonight representing F&F the Development, who are the owners of the property. As Ian said, this is the old St. Mary's Hospital site. Over the last several months, they've been busy on the demolition of the existing hospital and some of the older buildings. As Ian said, the office building at the corner of Bolivar and Missouri Boulevard and the parking deck that goes along with that remain. That'll be probably refurbish that building and possibly turned into offices. Definite plans for that aren't known at this time, and then the large parking garage on Bolivar Street also remain. Before the meeting, I handed out some copies of the preliminary and final subdivision plat. Based on some of the initial comments we got from the city, we have renamed the subdivision. So the proposed name of the subdivision is now Highland Village. The reason for renaming that is the staff thought there might be some confusion between Jefferson Landing subdivision here and the Jefferson Landing historic site. So Highland Village will be the new proposed name of the subdivision. And I'll just kind of walk through the preliminary subdivision plat. It shows a little bit more detail about the proposed development. Lot number 1 is located here, and that'll be a future hotel site. They are currently working on some of the grading for the entire development. Construction of the hotel is likely to begin this summer. Lot number 2 and 3 are located on Missouri Boulevard. Those are future pad sites with no known development at this point. One thing I'll just go back and mention is that the way the site is situated, it's really going to kind of sit on two levels. So there'll be one level that'll be up at the Bolivar Street level with the parking garage, the hotel, and this future lot 6. And then there'll be a driveway that connects the upper part of the lot down to Missouri Boulevard, and this will tie in at the signalized intersection at Missouri Boulevard, and then the Highway 54 ramps are located here. And then these two lots, like I said, would be located down on Missouri Boulevard level. Lot 4 in the subdivision is basically contains the road or the driveway itself, with the potential of these lots being ground leases and shared uses and shared maintenance responsibility. There will be a overall operation and maintenance agreement between all the eventual owners and users of all of the lots, where there'll be shared access and shared maintenance responsibilities of the common areas. So that's why a couple of these variances that we've asked for are needed, is just because of the way the property has to be split up to take care of some of those maintenance and operational issues. Lot 5 will be the office building and parking deck there. Again, right now there's not a whole lot of work going on there. Most of it will be interior renovations to that building. Lot 6 will be a future development pad located on the Bolivar Street level. And then Lot 7 is the parking garage itself. And that was the other lot that had a variance associated with it for a rear setback variance. Basically, we've got the property line put right on the back side of the parking garage. For the hotel, there'll be a driveway that comes in that will serve the main entrance to the hotel will be right here. So there'll be a driveway that comes in, and they'll be able to access the parking garage over here. So we needed to put that property line basically right at the back wall of the parking garage. The other variances was for Lot 6, which the variance for that is for lack of frontage on a public street. And again, the reason for that is this common drive, and the common drive down here splits that Lot 6 away from any of the public streets. But again, the operations and maintenance agreement that'll be put in place for the development will take care of access and basically gives all lots cross access between all the other lots. I think that is the highlights of it. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Sampson? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this request? Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition of this request? Is there anyone here who would just like to speak on this request? Okay. Seeing none, we will now close testimony. Ian, could you please give us the staff report?
Yes, just one moment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The preliminary and final subdivision plat meets the requirements for the subdivision plats as outlined within the subdivision code. The applicant will need to acquire the variances for Lot 6 to vary the requirement for street frontage within the zoning code, and for Lot 7 for a rear setback variance. The subdivision, and this was part of our initial discussions with Mr. Sampson about the subdivision and its name, and just so that it's easier to to make sure it's all taken care of, we recommend that the approval of the plats documents, subject to approval from the Board of Adjustment for the 2 variances, and to change the name of the plat, and they have already done that for us, and correction of minor technical details identified by city staff. Thank you.
Shane, do you have anything, sir?
Just a couple things to add, I guess, in regard to proposed improvements. Private stormwater system is proposed for the subdivision, primarily along the roadway, or the driveway that's proposed coming from the upper tier to the lower tier. As Paul had indicated, we've got a grading plan and erosion sediment control plan that's been approved for the subdivision, is underway. The proposed subdivision is to be served by existing sewers, both along Bolivar Street and Missouri Boulevard, and a new main is proposed for the 2 outlets there on the lower side by Missouri Boulevard. Let's see, I believe Ian had indicated about the development agreement in regard to the sidewalk. As far as utilities go, all facilities are either existing or proposed in accordance with our city standards, and new utility easements are being dedicated with the plat in various locations on the property. And the engineering division would recommend approval subject to our standard comments as well. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Do any of the commissioners have any questions of staff?
Would the street then be taken over by the city after it's built?
The private drive through the
That
property is
remain private?
it would be private. Yes, it's not to city standard.
I've not seen, maybe this is common. Lot 4 is basically the driveway, correct? Why consider it a lot?
I think I have seen that in other cases. In this case, I think the reason is, as Paul kind of mentioned in his presentation, is to basically separate it from any kind of ownership from any of the individual lots within the subdivision, and still having its maintenance governed by an overarching maintenance agreement in place. That way the physical property is not owned by any individual one. It would, of course, always be owned by someone.
Right.
And so there would either have to be an organization such as, call it a homeowners association, or in this case a property owner association, set up to own that lot, or have its ownership retained by the developer acting as the manager for the development.
And the tax basis would be different, I'm assuming, too. Property
Yeah,
tax.
I'm afraid I'm not an expert on property tax, so I do not know.
Anybody else? Seeing none. Would someone care to make a motion?
So, I move to approve the preliminary and final subdivision plat of Highland Village, subject to approval from the Board of Adjustment for the 2 variances needed, and subject to comments and technical corrections of the planning and engineering divisions.
Okay. We have a motion. Anybody care to second that?
I second it.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Okay, let's have a vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody in opposition? Okay. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, so now we're going to back up.
The plat will be presented to the city council on May 20th.
goes to Board of Adjustment on?
May 14th.
Thank you very much. Okay. Case number P19013, proposal to rename West Miller Street rear to Courtney Way. Anna, I understand you have this one.
Correct. Okay, so first I would like to orient you to the area. Closer to the mic. Sorry, guys. Is this better? Okay. So Highway 50 is directly to the south, and then the tri-level is to the east, and the surrounding streets include Hart Street, Industrial Drive, West Miller Street, and Brooks Street. West Miller Street rear needs to be renamed to avoid conflict with the existing street name of West Miller Street, which is directly to the north. Conflicts include 911 dispatch and USPS service issues. The proposed street renaming is to Courtney Way. Staff was inspired to rename West Miller Street rear to Courtney Way because of a 1908 Sanborn map. So back before Highway 50 and the tri-level, West Miller Creek ran parallel to Bolivar and Harrison, and the short Courtney Shoe Factory also sat on this site. You can still see this property today. It's being redeveloped as a mixed-use building. So to connect West Miller Street rear to, an old piece in history, we thought it was most appropriate to rename it Courtney Way. Again, West Miller Street rear needs to be renamed to avoid conflict with the name of the existing street, West Miller Street, which is directly to the north. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Anna? Okay. I assume you're going to present this case? Or was that it?
No, it is a public hearing item.
Okay.
And sometimes we get a lot of comments about street renames. I'm not sure we will this time, but there is at least one person in attendance that this is a citizen-initiated thing. Is people are having trouble getting their mail, and
Okay. Okay, is there anyone, with that being said, and it's being presented, is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this request? Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to this request? Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this request? Okay. Seeing none, we'll now close the public hearing. Correct? Okay. Anna, would you like to give us a staff report on this?
Yes, staff recommends approval of
Yes,
the renaming to avoid conflict with West Miller Street, which is directly to the north, and the recommended form of motion is at the bottom of the staff report.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions of the staff? I'm sorry, I didn't.
How many houses are on that street?
So there are around 3 or 4 properties that face West Miller Street rear, but during the public, what do you say? Yeah, 3 houses. But we notified everyone who touches West Miller Street rear during this process, but there's only 3 that face and have their address on West Miller Street rear.
And so it was someone that lived on that street that contacted the city about having the street renamed?
Correct. We were notified that they have had several issues with getting their mail delivered, and back in the day with 911 dispatch being called to the area, it just seems that they do not recognize the rear component of the address.
Mm-hmm. So the people that live on that street, if the street is renamed, this may sound like a dumb question, but does this mean that property owners will have to have their abstracts updated to reflect the name change?
No. All they'd have to do is just start using their new address. They would get a new address with the new street name, probably a new number for their house. But no, their abstracts shouldn't be an issue. Addresses change over time, and so.
Anyone else?
John?
I'll have a comment. I mean, we're not going to change it, but we sure have sterilized our city's history. I mean, all our alleys became ways, and it's just sad. I mean, I understand this one, but I sure wish Hog Alley was back up there. We sanitized all of our, but it just, I guess it's the future. Thank you, guys.
Any other questions? I agree. All right, seeing none. Closed testimony. And we've got, I'm just trying to get sure I get everything here. We've closed testimony. We've had the staff report. We've had questions. So we're down to a motion.
I move to approve the request to rename West Miller Street rear to Courtney Way.
I second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay.
And this case moves forward to City Council on May 20th, and then there's another extensive process to notify everyone about the renaming after that has been completed.
Thank you, ma'am. Case number P19014, zoning code text amendment pertaining to medical marijuana facilities. Staff report. Anna, you have this one?
Okay. So the purpose of this text amendment is to incorporate medical marijuana uses into the Jefferson City Zoning Code. The uses were approved by the November 2018 Missouri Constitutional Amendment regarding medical marijuana. Staff will be incorporating the uses into our zoning code in two phases. The first regarding the cultivating, processing, and testing facilities, and second being the retail or dispensary facility. We are choosing to do this in this phased method to incorporate these brand new legal uses into our code slowly. So there are two sides to medical marijuana. There's the people side, which are the qualified patients who will be consuming it, and then the facilities. Since all we care about is the facilities, I'm only going to be discussing those today. The Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, they will license, regulate, and monitor all of the medical marijuana facilities. Local municipalities, they can establish some land use regulations for the facilities. There are 4 different types of medical marijuana facilities. Medical marijuana cultivation facility, and that is an establishment that farms, stores, transport, and sells medical marijuana. There is the medical marijuana testing facility. They acquire, test, certify, and transport medical marijuana. Medical marijuana infused products manufacturing facility. They specialize in marijuana infused products such as oils or edible products. And then there is the medical marijuana dispensary facility, which is the retail establishment. Again, this is the first phase, so this zoning text amendment will only cover the cultivation, the infused product manufacturing, and testing facility. A medical marijuana cultivation facility, medical marijuana infused product manufacturing facility, and medical marijuana testing facility will be a permitted use in the M1 light industrial and M2 general industrial zoning districts. They will be prohibited in all other zoning districts. And the reason behind that is because they are industrial in nature, regarding differentiating between the retail establishment, which will go in different zones at a later time. There is 2 specific use standards for the medical marijuana, and this is, And these are regulations that were identified by the Missouri Health and Senior Services Department. No new marijuana cultivation facility, infused products facility, or testing facility shall be located within 1,000 feet of any then existing elementary school, secondary school, child daycare center, or church. And any medical marijuana facility licensed by the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services must comply with state requirements, regulations, and procedures necessary for any implementation or enforcement of this facility. Yes, so we brought those into our code because those are procedures that were identified by the Missouri Health or Senior Services and have had no changes from their recommendation. This is a map that was used by city staff to understand how that 1,000-foot separation standard would affect properties within the M1 and M2 districts. So then it highlights the M1 and M2 districts with that 1,000-foot buffer around them. Well, it shows a buffer, but it is a 1,000-foot separation in the code. Okay, so as you can see on the map, all of the purple is the M1 and the M2 districts. There's the gray with the other gray buffer around it. Those are either churches, schools, or child daycare centers that have been identified with the 1,000-foot buffer. And so it shows you the areas where they could be located outside that. Okay. And then to get more into specifics about the 1,000-foot separation, there's this diagram, and note that the proportions on here are not to scale. So for a medical marijuana facility, freestanding, the 1,000-foot separation is measured from property line to property line of the school, daycare, or church. So the property line that the medical marijuana facility sits on to the property line of the school, daycare, or church. For a medical marijuana facility within a multi-unit structure, so within a strip mall, it is a 1,000-foot separation between the front or back door that faces the school, daycare, or church in question. That 1,000-foot separation is measured from the door to the property line of the school, daycare, or church. Property line to property line versus door to property line. Again, the purpose of this text amendment is to incorporate medical marijuana uses into the Jefferson City Zoning Code per the November 2018 vote. These uses are legally allowed to operate within our city. This is our time to control or guide where they can go, like we have recommended in this text amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have questions? Mr. Deacon.
I understand the infusion and the all the uses under the M1 except the cultivation. I would think, I'm not a legal expert, but I would think any person with a greenhouse, they would fall under more of an agricultural rule like we do the local. They're cultivating a plant. So I mean, what is that considered manufacturing? Any different than growing some hothouse plants?
Well, I think the method in which it's done is more akin to an industrial type of operation.
That would be a legal question. I understand keeping it where you want to keep it, but I just question if cultivating in a greenhouse. I mean, you're putting it in soil and it's a plant, so that's really no different than growing pansies.
I believe that it's largely artificial light that's actually growing them more so than a greenhouse. So it's really, I think it really is, if you were to tour a facility, you would you would probably see it as being more industrial in nature than say agricultural. So it's not a flower shop, I don't think.
Also, I feel like there's not much agricultural land in Jeff City city limits either. So, right. What, as far as what?
I mean, we have greenhouses all over here.
But that's not technically located in an agricultural zoning.
No, I'm just saying it was an agricultural process.
As far as the process goes.
Yeah. I mean, you're using botany, you're using plant physiology. No matter how you're growing it, you're growing a plant. So I was just curious if there'd be a legal challenge that, hey, this is not necessarily an industrial product. This is more of an agricultural product.
Well, so where do we put greenhouses currently as far as the zoning sections?
I mean, greenhouses are permitted. I'm speaking a little off memory here, but they're very much a commercial use. I mean, the typical greenhouse of growing flowers and such is usually selling them also, and so again, I don't think that they're comparable. So,
I have a question. If it were to work in reverse, say there was a cultivation location and say a daycare wanted to move in within 1,000 feet, would they be prohibited then? I mean, I know they would be grandfathered in, but if that daycare wanted to move in,
they could still move in.
They could,
yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple issues with the language itself. I guess in the title of it, there's a typo where it says medical marijuana facilities. Facilities is misspelled on the very top part. And then on the second whereas clause, it says reasonably time, place, and manner, and that should be reasonable. And then one of my big concerns is that the amendment that passed says, and I guess I should preface this with my law firm does medical marijuana work, not in Jeff City. We don't have any clients that are seeking to be here. But there are other cities that have gone less restrictive than a 1,000-foot buffer. Within the amendment, there is a provision that says that if the city puts in place restrictions that essentially disallows these facilities from being here, that's unconstitutional. And so my concern is that with that map that you put up there, there's very few spots for these places to go. Are we effectively keeping out all of these facilities by including not restricting the 1,000-foot buffer and throwing it into M1 and M2? I mean, do we know how many parcels are even within the available M1 and M2 districts?
I don't think we have that detailed of an analysis, but I will say there's a fair portion of industrial zoning that's left that's able to accommodate this use. In fact, I dare say, I'm pretty sure that there's more industrial property that is outside of that buffer area than within it. Most of it, the stuff along Industrial Drive is probably kind of blocked out. Not all of it, though. But I think it passes that test in terms of there still being ample opportunities to locate such a facility. And you're right. It is the city has the ability to enact a lower separation requirement. That is one option that is open. The proposal in front of you is to mirror the basically what the state is having put in place, by default, so to speak, and that's
right,
the 1,000.
Constitutional
Yep.
Right.
And so we're basically not recommending any kind of deviation from that.
Okay. My other concern with the 1,000-foot buffer is that we don't put a measurement method in there. DHSS put out draft proposals that said the 1,000-foot should be measured by foot traffic, and we don't have any way to measure that. So is it as the crow flies, which would be more restrictive than what the state is doing? That would be concerning that we may be sued over that. Or is it, like their draft says, ability to walk it?
Of course, I have an attorney behind me. But if we're going to reference the separation requirement in our code, and I think we have to, then we have to reference a measurement option in there. I would hope that if we were found to be in violation of state law, the attorneys would strike us down pretty quick. But I don't think we're dealing with a large number of feet there. I'll wait for him to jump in.
Right. The intent is to mirror the DHS regs, and if we'll take another look, and if it requires an additional reference to mirror the method as well, we'll take a look and see if that's appropriate. But the intent is to mirror the regs that DHS has put out on the distance separation.
And I think if you want to look at it, that's 19 CSR 3095.040 was the draft reg that they came out with. Other than that, where it says child daycare center, I think one of the issues there is, what does that mean? I think it would probably be appropriate if we added in licensed child daycare center.
Child daycare center is a use identified in our zoning code, so it's a zoning code amendment. So it is referencing that specific item there.
And so how do we define it otherwise? Is it licensed? Is that how we define it?
It's differentiated from a child daycare service or a child daycare home. And so if you look in the definition section of our zoning code, there's 3 different types of child daycare centers. There's also adult daycare centers, so it's differentiated from that as well. But the reference is specific to the child daycare center, so there's no buffer behind a daycare home or a daycare service, and those are both residential types of uses. So,
so would it include unlicensed centers then? It's only licensed.
Yeah, I would hope we wouldn't have an unlicensed one. So if you say licensed daycare center, there are sometimes other uses that fall into licensure requirements by the state. And Ryan, this might be something to check and make sure we're on the right side of everything on as well. Say the YMCA, I believe, has a licensure requirement. Are they a child daycare center? I don't believe so. No.
Okay. Well, I guess my concern is, could somebody meet the requirement for child daycare center without having a license with DHSS or DSS already? Because my question would be, how would you even figure out where these child daycare centers are? I mean, are they forced to register with the city? Or
I believe I am correct in saying that all child daycare centers are required to have licensure, but not all licensed facilities are necessarily child daycare centers.
Fair enough. Okay.
So are the DHSS rules and regulations, are they just in draft form now? They've not been officially promulgated?
Yeah, they are in draft form, and they won't officially be released until June 4th. June 4th.
Are we on sure ground if we pass what we're doing tonight, that we're not going to get ourselves, or we're going to have to back up?
Right. We are on as sure as ground that we can be at this point of time. There are some deadlines that the state has put forth. Essentially, they're going to start accepting applications for facilities licenses by, I believe it's August 4th. As part of the application process, applicants are going to be required to identify the sites that they are proposing for their licensed facility. And so this puts in a framework that people can start relying on. We are going to go into these areas when they're making their application to DHSS. Issues regarding the draft regulations and any differences that may occur between the draft regulations and the final regulations can be picked up at a later time, but if necessary. And I haven't heard a whole lot of conjecture that the distance measurement requirements are going to change. I think a lot of the controversy is in other things regarding operation of the facilities, but these regulations that we're worried about here, they could change. They very well could change. I would be surprised if they do. They're pretty standard, pretty basic things, and so I would say that we need to put these in place and then address any changes that the state may kind of pop up with that may be necessary on a later date, as opposed to waiting until the state does makes the final draft recommendations on that. Otherwise, people are going to be seeking to site within Jefferson City without any type of indication of whether or not they're going to be allowed in the the industrial district or the commercial districts. We're worried about the kind of broader zoning implications, and we can get into the details if needed. So we've addressed the details consistent with the regs, and if the regs change, then we can match that. But we need to get kind of the base framework in place.
Anybody else? Okay. Is there anybody present that would like to speak in favor of this request? Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this request? Is there anybody here that wants to say something? Please state your name and address.
My name is Joy Stevens, and my address is 2842 Oxford Drive. And I know that the preliminary is just getting started, so I just wanted to go on record as saying that, obviously the law firm is looking at zoning, and one of the big things that we're concerned with is there are places in the state of Missouri that are reducing the 1,000-foot minimum requirement. I certainly hope that Jefferson City is one of those, because that would definitely be detrimental to us. The other thing, there's several other things, but they're not within this purview, so that's the only thing that you're voting on today and discussing today that I feel is appropriate to discuss. There's plenty of other things that hopefully keep abreast of when you're meeting and when this is on your agenda. It's easier to speak to those issues because there's many other things. We just want to protect the kids. Okay, that's our goal. The Kingston Amendment clearly states that, and I think that some communities are remiss in allowing that to be reduced. I don't think Jefferson City, I don't think the mayor, I don't think the city council members want that, and I know the community members that came from Jefferson commemorating 25 years of school. I know the community members there were interested in what was going on tonight in the control environment. So please make sure that we're taking into consideration everything as we go and move forward. I'll give you pick up too much of your time. Hopefully you appreciate my interest. Obviously, representing Council for Drugs for Youth, that is my goal, and that's why I'm here. So I appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Anybody have any questions for Mrs. Sweeney? Comments? Okay.
And I do also want to state that we are working with people that are working to open cultivation sites and are working to open dispensaries. We want to hear their side of the perspective. We want to work together. We want to do this so that we can operate within the law and protect our children at the same time. So just wanted to make that claim as well. A reminder here, we've been talking for a couple weeks. Obviously, nobody knows who's going to be administering the licenses, who's going to be able to cultivate or have any of this dispensary. But we are trying to work within people among all kinds of different groups so that it's not just coming from our perspective. We're trying to get a broad perspective and prevent that here. you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? All right, seeing none. Anything else the staff would like to add? Okay, do any of the commissioners have, I'm sorry, did you say that?
Staff recommends approval of this zoning amendment, and there is a recommended form of motion at the bottom of the staff report.
Thank you very much. Do any of the commission members have any more questions? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
Like make a motion for approval of the zoning code text amendment pertaining to medical marijuana facilities as presented by staff.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Well, I think, do we need to have discussion first?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Pertaining to your...
Well, yeah, the discussion, the only thing I have is that I think that we should probably recommend within our recommendation that there be a measurement method consistent with the Department of Health and Senior Services, whatever they have drafted. I think without that, there's just a little concern in my mind that we would probably get sued if somebody came in and either got denied or couldn't apply or couldn't meet the requirements to apply. And I would just hate to see that happen over something as silly as that. So that would be my only addition.
Okay. So with that, if I remember correctly, we're supposed to make sure that's all right with the motion?
If I may, just try to give a further response to that issue. We literally took it word for word out of the state, and so we copied the, of course that's draft regulations, but we copy it word for word into our code in an effort to mirror it exactly. And
well,
so
there's a bunch of subdivisions underneath of that part that talk about measurement, and so that's what's missing from here. And it says the shortest path measurable by foot is how they measure it from there. But you did get the A and B subparts are correct. I mean, those are directly out of it.
Okay.
But that's the one thing that's missing, and that could really mean the difference between a whole bunch of these areas being included or not included. So that's the only reason why I bring it up.
Okay. And so, yeah, if, however, the P&Z Commission wishes to proceed.
Okay, so we need to go back to the motion. Is that acceptable? You just have to make sure that it's acceptable to change your motion or to add to your motion that what Blake's saying. Amend the motion.
I would like to amend the motion to add in the I don't know how we're going to word this, DHSS measurement requirements?
Yeah, measurement requirement for the 1,000-foot buffer.
For the 1,000-foot buffer.
Is that okay with you, sir?
Method of measurement, I guess.
Method of measurement.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Other business? Thank you very much. Other business?
One moment. Do you want to report when it would?
This will be going to City Council on May 20th for public hearing.
Thank you very much.
So for other business, we have staff updates on prior cases. The case P19004 with short-term rental and P19005 for short-term rental at those two locations were passed by the City Council. And then as well as the zoning code amendment pertaining to telecommunication facilities for small cell towers was passed as well. And Anna has an update on the comprehensive plan.
Thanks. So, as some of you might remember, our department is currently updating the Jefferson City Comprehensive Plan, and this is going to be a 2-year-long project, so we've broken it up into several different phases. Currently, we are on phase 1, so I'm just going to update you about a couple of things. We've been doing a lot of background research and analysis for the comprehensive plan, developing a list of stakeholders so we can start scheduling some stakeholder interviews, and then starting to prepare for the community workshops, which will happen in the summer. And all of the stuff is very important information that we're doing ahead of time that will feed into all of the content going into the comprehensive plan. So what does this mean for you guys? Well, we would like to recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission acts as the steering committee for the comprehensive plan. And that means that you guys will regularly from now on being updated or asking to give input on different tasks and engagement events and analysis that will be going into the comprehensive plan. So look forward to the May meeting where we'll be having a work session where we'll be preparing for that round of community workshops that will be happening in the summer. Usually that involves having food there, having lots of discussions. So we look forward to having you all. And if you have any questions regarding the comprehensive plan before that work session, you can just let me know. Thank you.
I'll just add a little bit to what Anna said. And so I was not here when the last comprehensive plan was put together back in 1996, but my former supervisor, Janice McMillan, was, and so I gained a lot of knowledge on how that process went through. And so I believe at that time that the Planning and Zoning Commission acted as the steering committee for that plan document then. So we're basically recommending to do the same thing for this new round of update. Ian tells me that there have been no cases filed for next month's meeting, which means we have an open docket. And we would like to take that opportunity to basically move this meeting across the hall, have it maybe still a formal meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, but maybe a little more discussion oriented, because we would like to start to present some of our information on the comprehensive plan. And I think I referenced one time that routinely we like to signify how much we appreciate your valued service, unpaid as it is, by hosting a dinner. And so that's what we're hoping to do next month is feed you and talk to you about the history of Jeff City and where we're going to move forward from there.
May 9th.
Also, you are appreciated. The mayor and the city council and city staff would like to invite you to join us for an open house reception to recognize the board and commissions of the city. And that is on April 17th. That's separate, though. So you get your own dinner in addition to this appreciation. You're double appreciated.
The discussion.
I think if you come to the meeting, you can find out.
Ian, we've had this discussion up here, and I don't know if this is pertinent to you or not, but we want to know which way you're going to slice the bagels, because only one of them is correct.
I'm from New Mexico, and I've lived in Idaho and many other places, even China.
So how are you going to slice the bagels? That's what
when you come next month, you will find out.
That was actually next week.
Next week.
All right.
Or there's the bagels will be next week, I guess.
All right. Any other things that we need to touch on quickly? Seeing none, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Bagels are just a platform for free.
Yes, ma'am.